Hey everybody, Andy Kvernen here with another Cornerstone Connection Daily Devotional. How do you deal with stressful situations? You ever been around a stressful situation and struggled to deal with it? I think that's probably true for all of us at varying times in our lives. How do you deal with stress? But also, what kind of people do you prefer to have around you when you're in those stressful situations? What kind of people are helpful to you? When I think about my leadership experience, when I think about the different places that I've been in that have been stressful, whether it was a football game, playing as a high school athlete, or being in ministry and varying situations, I'm really grateful for those people that have been around me that I would say have a non-anxious presence, that they're able to engage with the situation, their head isn't in the sand, and yet they have an ability to respond with sort of an unaffected candor. They're willing to speak truth, but they're not emotionally wrapped up in it. They're calm, and they're in an environment that says, hey, yeah, this stuff that's happening around us might be bad, it might be stressful, it might be hard, but it's going to be okay. I really find that those people that are able to do that are super helpful for me when I'm in stressful situations, and it makes me want to be like that for others around me. In our daily Bible reading here at Cornerstone, we come to a passage in Deuteronomy 20 where Moses and God through Moses is instructing the people, hey, you're going to end up in some really stressful situations. In fact, when I send you into the promised land, there are going to be a whole bunch of people there that are not happy that you're there. And in fact, they're going to try to oust you. They're going to try to remove you from the land, but I'm going to be with you, and you're going to actually have to make war against these people. It's going to be a holy war in that God is bringing judgment against the people of Canaan. They've rebelled against God. They've rejected God's design, God's provision, and they've gone a way that's totally contrary to God. And so God in His sovereignty and His wisdom says, you know what? It's time for them to receive judgment, and it's time for the people that I've called out of Egypt to inherit the land that I had promised to their father Abraham. And so now's the time. Hey, people of Israel, you're going to be going to war, and guess what? It's going to be stressful. But listen to what He instructs here in Deuteronomy 20. He says, when you go to war against your enemies and see horses and chariots and an army greater than yours, whoa, stressful situation, right? Do not be afraid of them, because the Lord your God, who brought you up out of Egypt, will be with you. When you're about to go into battle, the priest shall come forward and address the army, and he shall say, hear, Israel, today you're going into battle against your enemies. Do not be faint-hearted or afraid. Do not panic or be terrified by them, for the Lord your God is the one who goes with you to fight for you against your enemies to give you victory. Now, friends, we're not called to engage in holy war in this time period in our lives. God hasn't called us to take up arms against other people for His spiritual purposes. And yet, we do realize we're in stressful situations all the time. And in fact, our struggle is not against flesh and blood, Ephesians 6, but against the powers of this dark world. And so, because there are oppositional forces against the things of God in our lives, we're going to encounter stress. But the people are reminded here, hey, when you're about to be in this stressful situation, when you're about to go to war, do what? First, remember who God is. Remember that it's God who delivered you in the past for the people of Israel out of Egypt. Friends, when you're in a stressful situation, remember that God is faithful, that God has delivered you. And you might recall those times when you've sensed the presence of God, when you've understood the love of God, and you might meditate, ruminate on those things. Don't be faint-hearted, says the text, or afraid. Don't panic or be terrified, for the Lord your God goes with you. Friends, that, though applied specifically here to the people of Israel going to war, is a universal principle for followers of Christ, that God goes with us. Now, I love this. A little bit later, it says that when we think about those people that were around in those stressful situations, there's something really important. Verse 8, it says, then the officers shall add, is anyone afraid or faint-hearted? Let him go home so that his fellow soldiers will not become disheartened too. And I find that so fascinating, that the instructions of God is to say, look, if anybody's not able to put their faith and trust in God in those moments of stress, just tell them to go home. Tell them not to engage in that stressful situation, because they're going to bring down everybody else. And now we could sit around and point fingers and say, well, this person's out, this person's out. I prefer I prefer to look at it from a personal perspective. How do I respond to stressful situations when I have responsibility for the people around me as a leader or as a participant? And one of these phrases that I referenced earlier, I'll bring up again. I love the idea of having a non-anxious presence. In front of people, friends, anxiety is contagious. And so what the principle here is that, look, if you're too anxious, if you're too anxiety ridden, then maybe you should back up and get out of the situation. Or on the converse, maybe you should reorient your mind and your heart for something else. See, what God has been instructing is to say to the priest, look, go and remind the people your God is with you. He's the one who fights for you. And I know for me, I'm at my best. I'm at my most non-anxious. I'm able to express my most non-anxious presence, participation in what we're doing, when I'm rooted in who God is, and when I'm practicing the disciplines of prayer and a Bible reading, when I'm allowing the Lord to shape my perspective. And friends, that's the best thing we can do for each other in those stressful situations. We can be drinking deep from the well that is Jesus, and then bringing that to bear in whatever situation we find ourselves. Friend, are you in a stressful situation, or are you in an environment where you have influence over others who are in stressful situations? Make sure you're right with God. Make sure you're resting in God's provision, and then bring yourself non-anxiously into that moment and see what God will do. God bless you, friends. Have a great day, and Lord willing, we'll see you again soon on the Cornerstone Connection.